Good morning and welcome to Counterpoints. Emily, how you doing?
Good. Sorry to disappoint everyone. We do not have a bro show today.
No bro show. That's all right.
It's all good.
We can still.
Yeah.
There we go.
Sagar did a great job holding down the counterpoints for it last week, so we are ready to dive into these
I meant to switch seats because he sat here and I sat there and I liked it so much better, but I forgot.
I forget that you like the other side. Well, maybe someday you can colonize Sagar's seat. Yeah. Well, Sagar did a great job holding down the fort, but we are within 2 weeks of the election, so we have quite a big show. Donald Trump is campaigning everywhere. Barack Obama campaigned with Eminem on behalf of Kamala Harris last night. A lot of people saying that he rapped the first verse of Lose Yourself. It didn't really, he wasn't really rapping.
It was a poetry slam.
It was a poetry slam, right. But I felt like I had been remember when you used to get rickrolled? I felt like I had been rickrolled by people saying Obama was rapping Eminem.
I read the Trump war room or whoever tweeted it. All the Republicans were like, I have no idea what that even was. Come on, you know what that was. Come on.
Yeah, everyone knew.
You know what it was trying to do.
So the campaign trail is chaotic as usual right now. So we're going to dive into some highlights from Trump's last 24 hours. Basically, we're going to talk about how the huge announcement, he's going to do Joe Rogan's podcast. We're also then going to turn to the Kamala Harris campaign. We're going to talk about Elon Musk. We're going to bring all kinds of updates from the world of big money, basically playing the role that it's playing in this election. Then, Ryan, we're heading over to Nebraska.
Yes, we've got an exclusive poll from the Nebraska Senate race, which we'll tease it for you now, shows Dan Osborne, who we had on the show about a month ago, up by 2 points over the Republican incumbent. This race could flip control of the Senate. I mean, actually, I would say that Nebraska is the Senate race that will decide control of the Senate, assuming Democrats lose Montana. We already know that they're going to lose West Virginia. Joe Manchin, God rest his soul, no longer with us.
Well, it could also be an AOC-style vibe shift for the Senate. So, the seat is scooped up by not a Democrat, but an independent candidate.
Right, an industrial mechanic, union leader, veteran, who led a strike and got fired for it.
Guest on the show.
Potentially now could be a senator. We'll see.
Yeah. All right. So we will dive into that. I really hate to say this, but we have updates from McDonald's, which is suffering in the stock market and in the stomachs, apparently, of people around the country.
So far, one person has died, an elderly person who died from E. coli infected quarter pounders. The stock price plummeted. Dozens of people sickened. Gross, disgusting.
Yeah, disgusting. Sagar wanted us to talk about it, so here we are. Yeah. We'll also do an update from Cuba. Ryan was able to get a fantastic on-the-ground report that we're really excited to play for everybody. The blackouts in Cuba are just unbelievable. Yeah,
Cuba went through its most serious blackout in its history post-revolution. Ed Augustine, reporter for DropSite, is on the ground in Havana and will update us on that. Yeah,
and we're going to finish with another DropSite report, actually, on the IDF. Fantastic report that DropSite published.
Yes, incredible report that looks into, that basically maps out an entire Israeli combat battalion, the 749 Battalion, tracing their entire path of destruction through Gaza, starting shortly after October 7th up until today, exclusively relying on their own social media posts. So you'll want to stick around for that one.
So let's start with Donald Trump's last 24 hours or so on the campaign trail. He sat for an interview with Saudi state TV and talked about what he thinks has become of the hostages, Middle East policy. Let's roll just a clip of that.
You said you have to release these hostages before I reach the White House. Yeah. So do you think what can be done?
Well, I would have said they have to release them immediately. I think if I said it, they would have done it. I think the hostages would have been back home. But I think even early on, I think a lot of those hostages were dead. I think they were dead. I mean, it's a very sad thing. It's not even believable when you think about it. But I think pretty early on, there were a lot that were gone. And, just God rest their souls. To live that way and to, spend. And these were largely young people that were having a good time at a festival. Life was a bowl of cherries, right? And they're dead. It's a very sad thing. But it's interesting. I don't know what's going to happen when they find out there are fewer than they thought, and it could be by a staggering number.
What about the destruction and the death of civilians Do you think that's tolerable price that Israel's doing in Gaza and in Lebanon now?
Oh, the destruction's terrible. The whole thing is terrible. It should have never happened. If October 7th wouldn't happen, which it wouldn't have, because Iran funds it, and Iran had no money. They had no money. They had absolutely no money. And I would have made a deal with them, and they wouldn't have done October 7th. But because they have no respect for Biden, they did it.
So, Ryan, this continues Donald Trump's campaign trail pitch, essentially, that Ukraine and the war in Gaza never would have happened if he was president. And this is genuinely the way that he's handling these massive foreign policy discussions. And honestly, I think it's one of those moments from Trump where it's like so absurd that it's almost brilliant, because you can't really rebut it, right? Like, what are you supposed to say? I have a time machine, and actually I can play out this counterfactual, but we actually know that a lot of times, like, the strongman theory of history plays out, at least on the micro level, not necessarily macro, but on a micro level in various conflicts, based on how world leaders personally interact with other world leaders. So I don't think it's as ridiculous as a lot of the media is making it out to be, but it is for any voter, they would actually like to know more specifics, and I think
like, what are you going to do?
Like some sort of basic questions, yeah.
But you could, as a voter, you could even grant him for the sake of discussion. Okay, let's say that that's true.
Yeah, he's just going to negotiate.
Right, now what?
Right.
Okay, you weren't president, so it did happen. Now here's where we are.
Right.
So now what are you going to do?
Right.
His point on the hostages is very Trumpian, and is also, there's some truth to it. Like, it's devastating for a lot of those families to hear, and kind of heartless because he doesn't have any specific information and he's not telling them anything specific. He's basically just telling them you should have less hope than you do have. But on the other hand, we do know that so many of the hostages who we thought were alive in Gaza actually died on October 7th. Like, that is a fact. And that hasn't gotten talked about much. It's just a very Trumpian, callous way to kind of inject himself into that question. He recently said that Biden is holding Netanyahu back, and that in fact he should do the opposite. And you have this remarkable situation, we're going to talk about this in a bit, where he's now winning Arab American voters.
Right.
While also saying that Biden has been too tough on Netanyahu. Yet he's smart enough that he's framing the race as around the Cheneys and that he's the peace candidate.
Right. And
but he's not disciplined enough to stick to that, because he's not.
Right, but the Harris campaign is playing right into his hands. And I mean,
absolutely.
Again, like, Donald Trump is absurd in many different ways, but this is not, I think this is actually one of those moments where Trump is kind of outside the paradigm, like the uniparty paradigm that absolutely chains other candidates to unpopular positions. And I'm not saying that it's like morally a pillar of like political moral genius, but it's actually politically pretty smart. Like, he's slippery.
Although there's never a place where the uniparty was supportive of the Cheneys. Like, the Cheneys were either popular among the Republicans.
That is really true.
Or popular among the Democrats.
That is really true.
They never had bipartisan support at the same time.
That's a great point. Although they have bipartisan support right now, just not with the people.
Right. I mean, they've got, what, Bill Kristol or whatever.
Yeah. But, and he may actually say he's formally a Democrat right now. But the entire reason that they're rolling out the Cheneys on the campaign trail is, he says he's a feminist, by the way.
Dick Cheney or Bill Kristol?
I don't think Dick Cheney could ever
go.
bring himself to do that. But it's because the Harris campaign thinks it'll win swing voters, which is sort of funny in and of itself.
Yeah, right.
But speaking of that, actually, we were just about to get to this shot of Frank Luntz, sort of famed DC pollster, talking about how the Trump campaign could use Nikki Haley. Let's roll Frank Luntz here.
Trump has said that Nikki Haley, once his nemesis in the primaries, could join him on the trail. She's done a robocall for him. She's recorded robocalls on his behalf. But if the Trump campaign deploys her, what kind of voters could that help with, and where do you think that they'll use her?
It will help with younger women because Trump is doing so well among older men. It'll help in these swing states, and Nikki Haley brings interest, brings attention among independents, among swing voters. There aren't many left, but what is left, they will listen to her. And it'll be a surprise because she has been so challenging of him, so negative towards him up to now. It's a very smart strategy, but in the end, it's not going to be the surrogates. It's going to be what they say and how they say it in the last 48 hours that will determine these final votes. The key for Haley is absolutely turnout, 18 to 29 women. The key for Donald Trump is absolutely union votes, young African-American men, and Latinos. It's too close to call right now. Who does better with those groups is the one who gets elected.
One part of that, Ryan, I'm curious what you make of, is him saying that the key for Nikki Haley would be 18 to 29-year-old women. I would think it would actually be an older demographic of women, slightly older, women in their 30s and 40s with kids who want a softer kind of a softer face on Trumpism to reassure them.
I would assume he would agree with that wherever she can make inroads with women or swing voters in general, or people persuadable in general, that she would go for that. This is a problem of the Democrats' own making, though, in some ways. Like, they elevated Nikki Haley as this reasonable centrist.
Yes. That's so true.
Who should be listened to when it comes to her take on Donald Trump, because they liked what she was saying about Donald Trump when she was running against him.
Right.
Lo and behold, you better be careful who you elevate if you don't think that they're actually in your camp. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, so now there will be this candidate, there's this candidate out there who the CNN and MSNBC and all the kind of suburban Democrats have said is a credible voice when it comes to Trump, going out and saying Trump is actually good.
Right. That's such a good point.
Whoops.
No, that's a great point. And this idea that, what Frank Luntz was saying there is like, this race is way too close to call. So to your point, Ryan, any slice that you can appeal to easily enough, like you get any surrogate and you put them wherever you can, because it's just a game of numbers. Like, you're just trying to tip the scale in one direction. And even if it's, basically what I'm saying, we don't think Nikki Haley, or I don't think Nikki Haley has like some broad demographic appeal in the United States, but there probably is a slim enough demographic of people who are in the middle of that Venn diagram where they take the mainstream media seriously and are sort of interested in Donald Trump.
Yeah, and right, exactly.
It's not a huge group.
And Democrats created her as a reasonable critic. And the reason I say it's a foreseeable error is that she is a complete maniac. Like, her politics...
Cheney-esque.
Her politics are Cheney-esque, and in many ways more insane than Trump's. Like, she has never met a country that she doesn't think we should be at war with, or should be our proxy doing war for us. Like, there are no other countries in the world. Utterly maniacal when it comes to foreign policy and militarism. And Democrats were willing to either let's be generous to them and say they're willing to overlook it because she was critical of Trump during a primary.
I mean, I think they like it. It's the same people who are elevating Dick Cheney.
Being generous. Yeah.
Well, speaking of sort of breaking out of the uniparty paradigm, Donald Trump agreed to go on Joe Rogan's show. Big news yesterday. He's going to sit down for an interview with Joe Rogan on Friday. I'm hoping the episode will air on Friday. That'll be
There's your weekend plans.
Right there it is. Can't wait. But Trump said, which podcast was it on? He said like a month ago that he would think about doing Joe Rogan's show. Yeah, you're right. It was Lex Friedman. And it was part of this longer conversation that he was having with Lex Friedman about why
I'm not going to ask him. He hasn't asked me. I'm not going to ask him.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Exactly. Why it's important to do new media, which is an argument that he's made a couple of times since, which is also pretty interesting. But he said basically like, I don't know Joe Rogan. I don't, I've walked out into the ring with him. People think that makes us friends. But he was kind of cold towards Joe Rogan when he was having that conversation with Lex Friedman. And here he is. He's agreed to do the podcast. Really speaks to the power of Joe Rogan. And another, credit where it's due, smart move on behalf of the Trump campaign, because I mean, this is a massive audience, and Trump is Trump. Trump doesn't have bad interviews. Trump only has Trump interviews. Like, there is no good or bad. It is just Trump.
Yeah, and if we didn't already, we can put A3 up on the screen. In some ways, Trump had to swallow some ego here, because it wasn't just that Trump had decided not to go on Joe Rogan's show. Joe Rogan, for many years, has been saying publicly that he was completely uninterested in having Trump on, and that Trump is a buffoon who he refused to vote for. So Trump knows that. And it is a testament to Rogan's power that that when he finally agreed, okay, fine, I will have Trump on, that Trump agreed. Because Trump hates nothing more than people who make fun of him, belittle him, insult him, don't look up to him, don't respect him. So for Trump to say, all right, despite him saying all that, I am still going to appear on his podcast, shows, how important his campaign and he understands Rogan's kind of gettable voting base to be. And that's what Democrats have or elite Democrats have just not understand about Rogan's demographic, that some of them they're locked in right-wingers, some.
Yeah.
But most of them, I would argue, are very much gettable.
Well,
and they're open to hearing an argument.
This is the thing that professional Washington struggles to understand, is the sort of what they would view as confusing and incoherent political views of the average American, and it's not incoherent at all. It's just like the average American isn't a fixed ideological creature like most of professional Washington is, and that's what I think Joe Rogan understands. It's interesting because Rogan basically seemed to be very exhausted by the pressures of interviewing candidates, because people would, when you're talking to Bernie Sanders or Tulsi Gabbard, people would put Rogan in one box with the other, and then they would start talking about him in the context of journalism and treating him like he's purporting to be some type of Walter Cronkite figure, which he's not. But he's also apparently, reportedly, in talks with the Harris camp. So if Kamala Harris did Joe Rogan, that would be an incredible disaster, because Joe Rogan has sort of like picked up the mantle from Howard Stern and is actually more Howard Stern-esque than Howard Stern himself. As we talked about Kamala Harris's very, very warm and friendly conversation with Howard Stern recently. I think for Harris, Trump can mix it up.
Think that'd be a disaster? Why?
She's so bad in unscripted situations.
But maybe a 3-hour, like she's bad in a 1-minute unscripted situation.
You think it might be different?
But in a 3-hour unscripted situation, more of herself would come out.
Possible. I mean, when she did that on Breakfast Club, she got caught lying about smoking weed and listening to, Snoop Dogg or something.
She said she used to smoke weed while listening to Gin and Juice or something, and it was years before Gin and Juice ever came out.
Like that.
Right. So, but she won't. The reason I think she could do better is that I don't think she'll feel a need to pander to Rogan. Whereas Breakfast Club, she's in full-on pander mode.
I feel like she would want to pander on Rogan.
No, I think because she's so kind of inculcated with the kind of democratic idea that this person is an adversary, that she would go into it a little bit adversarial, trying to be charming, but understanding it to be an adversarial situation.
Interesting.
And so then wouldn't be pandering. Who knows how she would try to pander to Rogan? It'd be funny to think about it.
Yeah.
Maybe she'd try out some comedy, some stand-up riffs. That'd be fun.
I see what you're saying, and I think there's a non-zero chance it's right, but I think the chance is also small.
Because what people don't understand, she's not dumb.
No.
She comes across as dumb sometimes because
I don't think she's like a
she doesn't believe anything, and yet she's running for president. You imagine how hard that would be.
Put yourself in her shoes.
Yes, put yourself in her shoes. She's trying to tell you what she believes about things, but doesn't actually believe them. Like, that's a hard act.
Pour one out for.
She's been doing it for decades. It's so have some sympathy for that. But she is the daughter of two brilliant people. Right. You can look up her parents, like extraordinarily talented people. That her sister, extraordinarily talented, civil rights activist, and she herself, very smart person. The role she's in makes it difficult for her. So if you let her go for 3 hours, maybe she actually loosens up a little bit. But the problem is,
possible. The
questions are still about what do you believe about things. And if she does believe things, she doesn't have enough confidence in them to say them. Like what she says is what her advisors are saying is the thing that's going to get her elected. So she still could get tripped up by that. But Rogan isn't going to talk policy for 3 hours.
Yeah,
He would just talk about her upbringing. He'd probably ask her lots of stories about Berkeley.
Yeah. Well, you and I both know the type of politician that is always in sort of acting mode and struggles to kind of get out of it. And a lot of politicians don't, like Obama. Trump is a different animal entirely, but there are some politicians who...
Obama's in it for so long, it is him.
Yeah. But there are some politicians who actually, can like unbutton the jacket, sit down, have a beer, and they'll say more interesting things. But there are also those politicians that literally cannot get out of politician mode. It's impossible. And she strikes me as one of those. Just because you play the act for so long, you keep up the act for so long, you forget who you actually are, kind of. That's my like armchair psychology. But
she could do what Elon Musk did on Joe Rogan, just smoke a little joint. Speaking of Elon, that appears to be what a lot of his canvassers are doing.
Seamless transition, Ryan.
Yeah.
People don't, that's it right there. That's the art of the transition.
And so an audit, according to The Guardian, if you can put up A4 here, of the America PAC's canvassers finds that 1 in 4 of them are stoned and skipping. Okay, I'm kidding about that part.
That's your theory.
Yes.
It's not a bad theory.
Although I'm sure a lot of them are stoned and hitting the doors. Some of them appear to be stoned and not hitting the doors. So of the people that they audited in Nevada and Arizona, up to a quarter of them were found to be suspicious. It's what in the Army they call pencil whipping. Like instead of actually doing the task that you've been instructed to do, you just pull out your pencil and your clipboard and you check off the box that you did it. In this case, they're, I'm sure, checking a box on a tablet, which, as you can imagine, is a very tempting thing for somebody underpaid who DGAF.
Well,
and
yeah.
You just, and of course, you could the box, the little tablet can tell. Like
it has GPS.
Yeah, if you just hit them all at the end of your shift.
Yeah. Well, so The Guardian audited data from a group called Blitz Canvassing that is part of the America PAC operation. America PAC was founded by Elon Musk, and it sounds like they contracted out to this group Blitz Canvassing. And The Guardian shows leaked data shows that 24% of the door knocks in Arizona and 25% of the door knocks in Nevada this week were flagged under its internal, quote, unusual survey logs, which is a metric used to determine fake donors. They use just one example where they say it showed a canvasser who was marked by GPS as sitting at a Guayos on the Trail restaurant half a mile away from the doors he was supposedly hitting in Globe, Arizona. Another canvasser was recorded marking voters as, quote, not home, 2 blocks away from that apartment. So this is actually kind of technical, and I don't know the details of how often this it's pretty technical and specific canvassing software. I don't know the details of how often this stuff ends up being off the mark. GPS, like that is being routed into software like this, it's possible that this is something campaigns deal with all the time. What is pretty telling, though, Ryan, is that someone leaked this to The Guardian from, presumably, it would have to be inside America PAC or from the canvassing group, which tells you that there's a lot of internal upset, likely, over whether or not they're doing a good job. And this was a huge problem for Donald Trump with outsourcing his youth operation to Turning Point USA Turning Point USA's PAC back in 2020. There was a ton of hand-wringing in the press by, a lot of anonymous sources, some on the record afterwards, saying that that was basically a disaster and that it didn't go very well. And so now it seems as though there's potentially more tension over at America PAC, which we were just talking about why it's important to even go for these like slim demographics of people who might be persuaded by Nikki Haley. Knocking on the doors is pretty important in a place like Nevada and Arizona. That's like the most basic thing that you have to do right.
Yeah. Who knows if Elon Musk's canvassers are doing this more than the typical canvasser. You would guess probably, but who knows? And we'll see. But it's funny, and we can all have a good laugh.
Now, less funny is this Lever report.
This is a fun one, and this has been kicking around for a while. We can put up this last element of the A block here, for a story from David Sirota's The Lever, about this provision that's been in law for 35 years. I've been thinking about this as Elon Musk has talked about taking a government official, an official government position. There is a law on the books that is designed as a good government law, which says you can imagine how this is kind of a fair way to approach things. Say, look, you're super rich, you own a bunch of stocks, you are invited by the people, through their elected president, to serve the public, and as a result, you're now required to divest from some of your holdings so that you don't have criminal conflicts of interest. The divestment might cost you an enormous amount in capital gains taxes immediately and could practically bankrupt you depending on how the financial situation unfolds. And so, therefore, we're going to allow you to defer all of those capital gains taxes. And we're going to otherwise kind of give you a unique tax break that is not available to anybody else in the tax code or in finance, as a thank you for your government service. And so, if Elon Musk gets that tax break, it could end up being worth billions of dollars. Now, Musk is. I don't think Elon Musk is doing all this for that tax break.
Yeah.
That would be crazy. However, it is billions of dollars that we're talking about. And I do think that Elon Musk is doing this for lots of reasons, many of which involve maintaining his position as the richest and most powerful person in the world.
I mean, it's fascinating how people on the right are glossing over the truly insane amount of government subsidies that he's hoovered up in his positions as a defense contractor, as an electric vehicle entrepreneur, and putting him in the government obviously ensures that he has more and more oversight of how some of those massively valuable subsidies that boost his products in the marketplace will be delivered into the future. Now, obviously, there are regulations like we were just talking about that change, what you can actually reap when you're in the position. So I doubt, I think he has a million different ways to get great tax breaks, to be honest. But it is, Sirota's right. This is significant.
It's the whole question is significant because it raises the broader question of what on earth he would do, because legally he would be required to divest from, say, SpaceX, or anything that's getting
it makes no
major
sense.
Starlink, anything Tesla, anything that's getting major government contracts,
which is everything he does.
And of course, he's not going to do that. And if he did do that, the tax break wouldn't be worth that much because the stock price collapse from him no longer being the CEO of those operations would probably kind of outweigh the tax benefit that he would get from it. So therefore, he probably ends up keeping them because who's going to tell him not to? Donald Trump? No.
Right, you're right. That's a good point. Well, yeah.
Donald Trump's attorney general? No way. So he ends up he probably ends up unloading things that he had been holding on to, and now he can get this tax break, but aren't consequential to his $250 billion kind of enterprise.
It's sort of inconceivable how it would work financially to put him in government. It's almost impossible to figure out what that would look like and how it would be done ethically, even if you're doing it in the most charitable possible
ethically,
way.
Yeah. People in the 70s conceptualizing this blow their minds. We have a piece that we published Sunday over at Dropsite that Emily actually gave us a right-wing sensitivity read for about
it's so good.
Elon Musk, and he just recently incorporated United States of America, Inc.
Yeah.
He calls his PAC America PAC, and it's a look at what on earth Elon Musk might be up to.
It's a good read. Yeah. I think it's really important. I wish there were more people on the right who were doing similar reporting. Hey, if you liked that video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Breaking Points.
If you want to see the rest of Counterpoints, go to breakingpoints.com to become a premium member and get the full uncut show every morning in your inbox and on Spotify.